I am the only Golden Immortal in the world who has ascended from immortal. In my last life, the Heavenly Emperor promised to give me Archon Ascension as long as I broke the Eternal Solitude curse and survived the love disaster after I descended to the earth. I had childhood companions with the young general, who loved me to the bone and took me as his wife when he triumphed in the battlefield. Unexpectedly on the first day of the wedding, he died on my pillow, bleeding from the 7 orifices. A tragic death. Lord Regent, despite the rumors, insisted on marrying the newly widowed me, but also bit his tongue and killed himself on the wedding night. Followed by the Buddha, who loved me as his life, and the scholar, all died tragically on their wedding night. Countless people thought I was a husband killer and wanted to know how I had killed so many people silently, but Imperial Court couldn't find any evidence. So they forced me to the court, and the gods appeared to put me on trial. I was whipped and boned and couldn't tell the truth until I died. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to the first day of my wedding with the young general. Point 1. Serafina. How could you be such a person? The general loved you like his life, yet you killed him on your wedding night. The cell was dimly lit, and the indignant voice of a personal guard came through. I snapped my head up, the residual pain from my previous life making me tremble. I was reborn before the failure of tribulation trials, thinking of the tragic death of General Bamboo. Instead of being sad, I was so elated that I fell into tears. In my previous life, I had a crush on the Heavenly Emperor for many years, but was discriminated against by the Heavenly Court due to my status as a mortal ascended. Being bullied by Su Ringyu, a goddess who also had a crush on the Heavenly Emperor. Lowly mortals don't even deserve to appear by his side. To prove my sincerity, I descended to tribulation trials just to be worthy of the Heavenly Emperor. But in the 10 years or so since I descended to Earth, I have been with Kronos' childhood companions. Only then have I realized what true love is like. He is a young god of war who has won 100 battles. Is spirited and unruly, but is only gentle with me. Every time he goes out, he will bring me all the novelty food and toys along the way, and even on the battlefield, he will use his body to protect me. The guards laughed at him, devoted partner, and he just hooked his lips. I'm not afraid of the blood and shadow of the battlefield and the light of the sword, but am afraid of the twigs shedding tears for me, even for Kronos. I won't shed another useless tear. There's no one else in the wedding room. With you being a weak woman, how on earth did you take on the general? Serafina. Don't think you can get away with it just because Imperial Court can't find out. Seeing my perverse reaction, the personal guards were so angry that they pointed at me. The general practiced martial arts since he was a child and has a strong body. How could he die violently overnight? Do you know that he even booked you a one-night starlight flares today? Serafina. You're the one who killed him. I bowed my head in silence, hiding my expression in my messy hair. He's not going to die. I'll get him back, no matter what. The proctor sneered. Don't be hypocritical. How can a person come back from the dead? Imperial Court didn't find any evidence, and it was late in the evening when I was released. Starlight flares bloomed in the night, but the man who was supposed to be with me was no longer there. In a previous life, Kronos died silently on my pillow. His handsome features were stained with blood and he looked pained. I searched for Shadow Realm, but couldn't find his soul essence, and after 3 years of crying and blinding myself, he wouldn't wipe away my tears even if there was only a tombstone left. At this moment, I was looking at the starlight flares, a symbol of my love. But I couldn't shed a single tear. Fate Keeper appeared and announced that the tribulation trials had failed, and asked me to go back to the Heavenly Court immediately. I slowly raised my head and looked at the figure in the alley. This life is not over yet. I still have a chance. The tragic deaths of the 3 husbands in my previous life. There must be someone behind it. No matter what, I have to find out the truth. As usual in my previous life, Lord Regent immediately sent someone to pick me up. He even brought a complete set of bride price, saying that he had long been in love with me for many years and pitied me for being alone. However, I thought of his determination to bite his tongue in my previous life, and his eyes that were filled with hatred towards me. Shaking my head, I looked to Crimson Baron, who was famous in the capital. I have been secretly in love with Shitsi for many years. GG. You're crazy. He has a special fetish and has robbed countless folk girls into his house. Which one of them wasn't thrown out in a miserable state of death? Lord Regent stopped me. Seiji, however, grinned broadly. Good. I haven't played with the war god general's woman yet. I endured his lustful gaze sweeping over my entire body without a single fear in my heart. I wasn't afraid of suffering as much humiliation and pain as I could, as long as I could get to the bottom of it and successfully become a god. I will have countless chances to find Kronos and resurrect my beloved. 2. My son disliked me for my bad luck and only allowed me to wear a pink wedding gown when he got married. Before he even entered the door, he first cheerfully took another 300 beautiful concubines and asked me to stand by and watch their many pleasures. Bitch, a servant girl must learn to serve my son earlier. You're not that general's wife that someone holds up. Just because Kronos had taught him a few lessons about the horse he had set on the street. Shitsi hated Kronos with a passion and wanted nothing more than to torment me and humiliate him. 3 days before the wedding, he was drinking in the house while I had to kneel naked in the snow to learn the rules. I was to wash and scrub the clothes of all the servants in the Seiji's house, and the complimentary buckets. But at night, he was disgusted with the stench of my body and left me to fend for myself in the outhouse. It was snowing heavily in the capital, and the roof of the thatched room had a big hole in it, so the wind was chilly. On the day of the wedding, I was wrapped in a pink wedding dress and carried into the prince's room with a high fever. On the day I married Kronos, he gave me 10 miles of red makeup. Today, all of the general's wealth has been misappropriated by his son, but I don't even have a ceremony to worship heaven and earth, and the guests and banquet are non-existent. I am just like an object, given to Shitsi to fulfill his desire. He was rude in his sexual intercourse, and he loved to use some hurtful means. By the time my son went to sleep, I was already bruised and bleeding. But I was still strong in spirit, holding back my hatred, and used my immortal power to check his body over and over again. Aside from overindulgence, there were no major problems, and there were no other traces of immortal power present. I sighed in relief, but still refused to close my eyes, staring at him until dawn. At dawn, however, Shitsi suddenly stared with wide eyes, his liver cut off and his breath severed. This couldn't be. How could a big living person die in seconds under my eyes? I subconsciously wanted to hide the body and find a coroner for an autopsy. But soul essence was sent up to heaven by a powerful suction. Fairy Rougie succeeded this time, didn't she? Congratulations. The crowd congratulated me, but I was sweating. Who on earth forcibly recalled me to the heavenly court? He clearly wanted to put me to death. The heavenly emperor spoke faintly. Rougie, although I believe you. Pity Moon said that fairness should come first. Why don't we all take a look at the lower realms together? Goddess Selene affectionately held my hand, plucking away the clouds. The lower realm was visible. Seiji was found brutally dead in his bed. The mansion was in chaos, and I was muddled and escorted to the heavenly prison to die. The people were shocked, and their eyes turned ghastly as they looked at me. Seraphina. Is this what you call success? The heavenly emperor looked cold. You are also from a mortal background and know that life is precious. Yet you still wantonly harm people in the lower realms. The goddess asked sorrowfully. Did you really think you did it quietly? Do you really think you can hide it from so many pairs of eyes in the heavenly court? Sister Rougie, what exactly have you done? Both the general and the world son love you like life. Yet you say, why in the world did you do this cruelty? The crowd surrounded me. The goddess shed tears. Sister became an immortal. So you dislike mortals. You want to kill them all. I raised my eyes and said word for word. It wasn't me. I don't know, Goddess Selene. Since she is so heartbroken, why don't you die for them? Goddess Selene dodged behind the celestial emperor in delicate fear. You're just a bloodthirsty madman. Your Majesty, save me. The heavenly emperor wrapped his arms around her waist, and when he raised his eyes, the bottom of his eyes were already covered with killing intent. Are you threatening Rinyu? Seraphina, you have a lot of guts. People like you don't deserve to be a god, much less an immortal. This day, this gentleman will do justice to heaven and break your divine core. He knows that I have been practicing for 100 years and value the chance to become an immortal. Yet he still wants to take away my divine core. The divine core was broken and I fell to the ground. The pain swept through my body and my consciousness was about to dissipate. But Rinyu reached out and tried to pull out the divine core by force. And just when I was in the most desperate moment, an imperial decree came to me from the mortal world. By order of His Majesty, Shinrushi is invited to join the palace as a consort. 3. At this point in time, there is still someone willing to marry you, or a mortal son of heaven. Rinyu cries out incredulously. Seraphina, where did you get such great charisma to seduce several men to risk their lives for you? The jealousy under her eyes was clearly visible. I was calm on the surface, but my heart was also in turmoil. In my last life, the Son of Heaven never decreed to marry me, and even sentenced me to beheading at the end. Why today? He wants to marry me. I hid my foxing and said to the crowd, this life is not yet over. The crime of killing my husband, if it is not me, I will not recognize it. Even if it's just the final blow, I'm going to put my best foot forward. Not only for myself, but also to save my little general. The heavenly emperor's eyes turned cold, still talking tough. This sovereign would like to see, with your appearance, who would dare to marry you. He knocked me down to the mortal world. I was picked up by the Son of Heaven and treated with the palace's best medicine. He externally named me his consort, but in actuality never touched me, let alone married me, without ceremony, not to mention the harem roster. Instead, a carriage sent me secretly to the neighboring country, as a beauty offered to the neighboring emperor. The emperor promised that when I returned home, he would golden carriage to marry me. The neighboring country's people are barbaric, and the emperor is even more bloodthirsty and brutal. Every night, he drank a bowl of life elixir, and on the night of the wedding, I was thrown on the corner of the bed like a rag doll, and he slept soundly, with my dried blood on the corner of his mouth. Early the next morning, the neighboring emperor also died. He used the drapery on his bed and strangled himself hard, without a single struggle the whole time. And as I watched his perverse actions, not only did I not stop him, but I also opened the door of the palace for all to see. The truth of my husband's death on our wedding night became a little clearer in my mind. Without the emperor, the country was in chaos. When I was hanged, the army of my dynasty broke through the capital of the neighboring country. The Son of Heaven sat on his horse and looked down on me. Madam General is really a black widow's mark. Without you, I would not have been able to break through the capital so smoothly. He decided not to mention his promise. No 8 sedan chair, celestial attire. I became a captive of the Son of Heaven, for him to hold the horse all the way back to his homeland. Former neighbors and friends saw me shunned. What a sweeping star. When the general was here, I saw that she was restless, so I killed the general and quickly remarried. It's not enough that she killed her second husband. She even thought of going to the enemy country to be the queen, not even looking at herself to see if she's worthy. Fortunately, the Son of Heaven was wise and didn't fall under this bitch's spell. One sentence is like a sharp knife inserted into my heart. The Son of Heaven seemed to smile. Seraphina, Give up your delusional thoughts. It is impossible for me to marry you. I smiled. My humble concubine does not seek your majesty's mercy. Your majesty will grant me to eunuch Fu at your side. The son of heaven was puzzled, but felt that I knew the time and agreed without hesitation. On our wedding night, I slept side by side with eunuch Fu, who was over 60 years old. He was not a real man and naturally could not touch me. What's more, everyone now thinks I'm dirty, and even the eunuchs don't like me. Early in the morning, eunuch Fu's breath was still there, and I revealed a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Golden light had already appeared in the sky, an omen of tribulation trial's success. I thought about what was to come and trembled with joy. I will prove with my actions that killing my husband is a trumped-up crime, and I will resurrect Kronos and be with him for a long time. As I thought about this, my body slowly rose into the air. Seeing Goddess Selene's shocked expression. Didn't expect it. I still succeeded. I was just about to open my mouth when I suddenly felt my body sink in a sharp pain in my chest. Unashamed. How dare you even deceive the heavenly Tao? The heavenly emperor kicked me down, pointing at eunuch Fu's corpse and roaring, Seraphina, do you think that by fabricating illusions and forcibly renewing the lives of mortals, you can cover up your sins? 4. I didn't expect her to be such a person. How dare you play such a small trick? It's true that she's a lowly mortal. And even if she becomes an immortal, that smell of mud and dirt can't be covered up. The goddess even spoke up for her several times and gave her so many chances. Instead, she just ended up harming more mortal lives. She should just pull out her divine core and let her soul be scattered for eternity. The crowd surrounded me with my broken leg. Malice bent my spine inch by inch. The goddess stood at the forefront, her eyebrows lofty. Mortals are still mortals. Their nature is evil, and no matter how hard they cultivate, they are just pretending to be good. We are born to be immortals. Naturally, we are more noble and better from our bones. Why should we be so harsh on Fairy Rougie? Just pull out the divine core and forget about it. It's you. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth and said with certainty, the destiny book shows that Kronos lived to be 80. We could have ended up happy. Why did he die? The celestial emperor laughed coldly. Do you think Rinyu is as vicious as you? She is a pure goddess. What are you? The goddess. However, sobbed lowly. Your Majesty doesn't have to say anything. Sister Rougie was just too scared to speak out of turn. Even though she grasped people up, she did it to become a god faster and get closer to your Majesty. She ignored everyone's protection and leaned down to embrace me in the bloodstain. But whispered in my ear, no matter how hard you try or how much you argue, the end is predetermined. You will never succeed. You and I, we are clouds and mud. The rift between mortals and gods. The greedy desire in her eyes was completely different from her innocent appearance. What could I not understand at this point? All the pain of my past and present lives was Goddess Selene's plot after tribulation trials failed and pulled out my divine core. What would she do? Seeing my anger, Goddess' voice was cool. Seraphina, why can't you be a good mortal? How much of His Majesty's gaze and attention have you taken away since you ascended? If you want to steal him from me, then I will have to let you roll. How can a mortal be equipped with a divine core? Why don't you give it to me? It should have been mine as a god in the first place. I violently pushed her away, but she flew out a dozen meters like a heavy blow and hit the ground hard. Sister Rougie, do you really want to kill me? The way her eyes were red and the corners of her mouth were bloody touched the heavenly emperor. Seraphina, Rinyu was kind enough to comfort you, but you actually killed her. In vain. I trusted you so much in the past, and even gave you tribulation trials chance to ascend. Now it seems clear that you have sent the safety and security of the three realms to a bloodthirsty and insane executioner. You've disappointed the sovereign too much. Once upon a time, as soon as I saw his pained gaze, I would subconsciously explain and obey. But nowadays, I only have Kronos alone in my heart. No longer have the position of the heavenly emperor. And I don't care about his anger even more. Without giving him a single superfluous glance, I said to the goddess, before I die, I just want to know the truth. Why do all my husbands die tragically on their wedding night? I threatened her. If I dissipate into heaven and earth on my own, you will never get the divine core you want. Goddess Selene's face twisted. In the middle of the day, she still approached me and attached herself to my ear to tell the truth. 5. As she spoke, my fists clenched tighter and tighter. Breath brought up the smell of blood, and the pain nearly incinerated me from the inside out. So what if I know, Seraphina? You see who in this heavenly court will believe you. She taunted my powerlessness, not realizing that I had never thought to defend myself. In the celestial court, I, a mortal ascended fairy, was just an outsider. I knew that there were countless people who were looking forward to my tribulation trials failing and my death. So I didn't say much, but bit down on the hem of my coat. Drawing my own divine core in front of everyone, blood and white bone. Seraphina. This king has never. The celestial emperor's eyes shook with the desire to speak. The crowd also only looked at each other for a few moments before resuming their state of watching the show. Rougie knows that her sins are so deep that she has nowhere to atone for them, so she has no choice but to use her body to thank for her sins. I slowly leaned down and caught a glimpse of the hesitation and heartache in the bottom of the heavenly emperor's eyes. Once upon a time, I was stubborn and would never admit to a baseless crime. The heavenly emperor always said that I would suffer in this way, but still secretly protected me. But now, until the time I confessed everything, he did not open his mouth to say a word for me. Perhaps he is not completely devoid of feelings for me. It's just that such feelings, when put on the scale, don't compare to the love Kronos gave me. In that case, banish you to desolate expanse and never return. The goddess couldn't wait to put me on trial. And I didn't resist in the slightest. The gods and goddesses discussed it with great interest. Another mortal wasted. This one didn't last more than 100 years. If she dared to shao His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor, she should have thought of today's ending, Goddess Selene stuff. How dare she grab it? It's just a pity that this time, Goddess Selene got it first. There's no telling when the next mortal to ascend to immortality will have to wait. That pair of divine core I looked at has quite a good color. I guess there won't be a second one in 10,000 years. What a pity. The way they looked at me was not like their own kind, but more like looking at food, or animals. The high and mighty gods wouldn't see that the bottom of their most despised eyes of me had long been covered with killing intent. Since I was able to live a new life, how would I repeat the mistakes of my previous life? Even if I were to die with them, even if the fish were to die, I wouldn't let them have a good time. On the third day of being banished to the barbaric wilderness, Fate Keeper enacted the decree of the future Heavenly Empress. In 3 days, Goddess Selene and the Heavenly Emperor will be married at Elysian Springs, and the goddess has specially invited Fairy Rougie to go there and take a look at the future Heavenly Empress' demeanor. His tone was condescending and mocking, lest some people are thieves and toads want to eat swan meat. 6. When I arrived at Elysian Springs, the crowds were all dressed in fine clothes and clanking rings. I, on the other hand, looked extraordinarily haggard and withered, and even wore an onyx. Desolate expanse is truly horrific. Only 3 days and Seraphina looks like this. Who can still tell that she used to be a beauty on par with Goddess Selene? Isn't this a self-inflicted sin? Serves her right for causing so many lives. It's best to die. Just in accordance with the mortal law. Murder pays for life. Goddess Selene dressed up exquisitely and came specially to see me. Sister Rougie made a mistake and deserves to be punished. It's just that today is my wedding day, and Sister is dressed in such an obscure manner. Is she deliberately trying to make things difficult for me, even if Sister's heart is set on His Majesty? It's long since impossible for you two to be together. His Majesty even promised me today that I would be the only woman in the future, and that he would never look at another person again. She wanted to see me enraged, but I was indifferent. Today is my husband's mourning cycle. I am merely wearing mourning for him. The goddess froze slightly, displeasure crossing the bottom of her eyes. But soon, she saw the heavenly emperor walking towards her with a faint smile. Displeasure turned into a pool of spring water in a blink of an eye. His Majesty has come to fetch me. Sister Rougie has been widowed for 3 marriages, so I don't want to get into bad luck. So you can sit outside Elysian Springs and keep watch. She proudly bumped away from me and threw herself into the arms of the heavenly emperor. Fairy music was played, and the two of them walked up to the high platform arm in arm, looking like a couple of immortals. Following the process, Goddess Selene summoned the bondstone and prepared to carve their names together. But when she touched the name on it, she was stunned. Why is your name on it? Seraphina. What have you done? I slowly rose from my seat and curled my lips. I just married again. As the words fell, the celestial emperor, who was holding Rinyu, fell straight to the ground, spitting out blood and breathing weakly. The crowd was shocked, and only then did they take a closer look at the bondstone, only to see 2 names engraved on it. Seraphina, Celestial Sovereign Orion. The heavenly Tao is above. And the names engraved on the bondstone are husband and wife. Seraphina is the famous Black Widow's mark. Your Majesty wouldn't have been grammed by her as well, right? How is that possible? Those mortals can still say that they were secretly killed by Seraphina. But His Majesty is a great god. How could he have been victimized by a small golden immortal? Where could Seraphina be so capable? Looking at His Majesty's symptoms, it's more like he's been cursed by an ancient spell. The goddess panicked and scratched the name on the bondstone, and several times she did it. The writing on the stone did not move. Seraphina, you did that on purpose. While in the mortal world, every man you married died a strange and tragic death. Now, you still want to marry His Majesty. Do you want His Majesty's life? The goddess looked at me viciously. His Majesty adjudicates justly, yet you hold a grudge against him to come up with such a poisonous plan. His Majesty's safety is related to the stability of the 3 realms. Do you want to jeopardize the 3 realms because of your own selfishness? The crowd released their magic weapons, their eyes burning to put me on the spot. Seraphina, if you still have a bit of conscience and still remember the care that His Majesty took care of you in the past, then hurry up and set things right. The heavenly emperor's face grew paler and paler, and the blood that flowed out stained the ground red. I, however, did not flinch and asked sternly in return, just who is it that has no conscience? Who exactly is the one with an evil heart? Why is it any of my business if your goddess Selene is being turned back by her own wickedness? Goddess Selene calmly met the questioning eyes of the crowd. Do you all really want to believe her nonsense? Why should we believe the word of a mortal of such low character? I wasn't surprised, since someone recognized that what your Majesty was struck by was an ancient spell. How can I, a first-time mortal, know and cast the spell? Why don't we all have my deceased husbands come out and confront me to see if I killed my husband or if someone is secretly behind the spell? 7. Fate Keeper immediately went to the hell to look for them, but found nothing. Goddess Selene, however, relaxed and raised her hand to summon 3 soul essence. At first, I was afraid that Sister Rougie, in order to escape the punishment, would kill these mortals. That's why I secretly hid them. The 3 channels of soul essence hid behind the goddess, but I only saw one person in my eyes. But the eyes of my little general looking at me were no longer full of love and tenderness, but fearful and cowering. The world sun and the neighboring emperors were even more scared shitless, itching to burrow into the ground and escape. The crowd caught a glimpse of it. It really was Seraphina who killed them. Otherwise, how could they be so afraid of her? Seraphina's first husband was said to be deeply in love with her. But now, not only is he afraid, he even has hatred. It must be because Seraphina did something terrible to him. She has a good face, but this heart is blacker than an evil spirit. Even her own pillow can do it. Won't she destroy the sky and the earth in the future? It's a good thing we smoked her divine core, so that she won't become a great scourge in the future. Goddess Selene smiled smugly. Isn't Seraphina your wife? Why are you so afraid of her? She pushed Kronos towards me, but he just cowered and bowed his head, crying like a demented child. Seraphina. That's what's eating itself. But there was no trace of anger or sadness in me. Instead, my eyes were filled with the joy of being lost and found. No matter in my past life or in this life, I never gave up looking for Kronos. But I couldn't find him. I couldn't find him in either place. I knew that he must be in the hands of Pity Moon. Pity Moon wouldn't tell me, because Kronos was her last card to nail me to the pillar of shame. After all, only if he disowned me. Only then would it increase the authenticity of my killing my husband with my own hands. And only then would all of heaven hate me with a passion. But now, Rinyu has finally released her bottom card. Then, it's my turn. Thinking of this, I tenderly took Kronos by the hand, the curve of my mouth growing wider and wider. The bleeding wrist hidden behind me was also revealed. Goddess Selene, it's your turn to eat your own. The entire Elysian Springs flooded with blood-red light, and the immortals panicked to check it out. It's an ancient formation. Judgment Conflux. Those who enter this formation will have their past karma revealed. And those who are the most evil will have heavenly tribulation added to their bodies, and will surely die. Those who are good will be able to ascend to the same place. How do you, a mortal who became an immortal, know this? What's more, Judgment Conflux requires blood soul essence sacrifice. How can you alone open it? I smiled brightly, and dozens of black shadows were released from my wide morning sleeve robes, standing behind me as if they were a dozen high walls. Immortals. Do you still remember them? Back then, you seized his divine core only to increase your own cultivation and live with the sun and moon. Like me, they all wore simple mulberry and linen garments. There were no golden silk chinquin sleeves of the immortals, only sleeves that had been worn out long ago after hundreds of years of bitter cultivation. They were mortal golden immortals like me, who had only disappeared into the dark corners of the heavenly court, but had now returned from hell, only to seek revenge. The moment they saw them, the faces of many immortals changed color and flashed with panic. But after a long while, they grinned. How dare a group of mole crickets shake the sun and moon? Mortals are just demented and useless. How dare they clamor for vengeance for something we can kill with a lift of our hands? Your predecessors told you Judgment Conflux. Didn't they tell you that we all have countless faiths to protect our bodies, and have long been unafraid of a small heavenly calamity? Goddess Selene coldly said. Seraphina, since you are unrepentant, don't blame me for being merciless. I wanted to leave you alive. But now, you can only die. Mortal ants, if you want to shake the sun and the moon, then be prepared to be destroyed by the sun and the moon. Ha 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 ha. I threw my head back and laughed. Griffins, you see mortals as ants, yet you still rely on their faith to survive. Don't you think it's ridiculous? If they no longer believe in you, what will you do? After saying that, I waved my hand. The clouds dissipated, and the crowd suddenly saw a huge canopy hanging in the mortal sky. Inside it was showing everything that had just happened. 8. Judgment Conflux. In Judgment Conflux, people who have committed serious sins are covered with black gas and haunted by evil spirits, while those who have perfected their merits and virtues are protected by golden light and are not victimized. And there is not a single one of those crowned immortals who is not surrounded by black aura. Are these the immortals? Why are there so many sins on the gods? So the drought 10 years ago was their doing. The immortals were just playing a game, but we died over 100,000 people. What kind of reasoning is this? Why should we believe in such immortals? As the mortals' emotions changed from disbelief to resentment, the power of faith in the immortals weakened layer by layer. Since their birth, they had been immortals and considered themselves a noble race. Unaware of the suffering on earth, they treated everything in the mortal world as a game, a bargaining chip for jokes. Sending down a natural disaster today, triggering a war tomorrow, it all depends on their mood. What's more, they have the lives of countless mortals and immortals in their hands, in desolate expanse. I met my predecessors. It turns out that it's not that there are no precedents for mortals to become immortals in heaven. It's just that they all died. Compared to the innate divine core of the immortals, the divine core of mortals who have been cultivating for hundreds of years is more powerful and more loved by heaven, thus making it a great tonic in their eyes. Just by stripping a mortal of his divine core, he could be more powerful. It was too easy for the immortals who had no moral rules. Thinking about this, my eyes were just as red as those of my predecessors. How could I not hate it? In my past life, in this life, from the moment I descended into the tribulation trials, I stepped into Goddess Selene's trap. She killed 3 of my husbands just to hide from the heavenly Tao, punishing me for the crime of failing in tribulation trials and brutalizing mortals, and logically taking away my divine core. Why should she be a cloud and I have to be mud? Why should we mortals only be mole crickets? In judgment conflux, the power of faith of the immortals is getting weaker and weaker, and the lightning of the heavenly tribulation envelopes the entire heavenly court. The seniors only had a trace of soul essence full of hatred left, but still rushed into the formation, tearing their fleshly souls. 9. The heavenly emperor, who had just weakly awakened at this point, accused me, Seraphina, you will only add to your own sins by letting these sinners into the heavenly court. He looked at me with deep emotion in his eyes. Although they are mortals like you, they are all vicious and sinful people. It was because they violated the rules of heaven and failed to cross the tribulation that they were exiled to the barbarians and soul essence dissipated. Ruji, you should understand that in my heart. You are different from them. Don't be obsessive. If you connive at evil spirits to hurt and harm people again, this monarch won't be able to save you. I was expressionless, only finding him ridiculous. Why do your majesty the heavenly emperor need to be hypocritical? You gods and immortals, who consider yourselves to be so noble that you treat all mortals ascending to immortality as foreigners, as divine core vessels. It is also you who condone them to lay hands on mortals and snatch divine core. I am immortal with them all. How can I be any different? The heavenly emperor gazed at me for a long time and said in a mute voice, Ruji, this sovereign's heart is pleased with you. Originally, as long as you stay in the barbarian wasteland for a few more years, this monarch will marry you as a side consort after pacifying Renew. Isn't that enough? This monarch knows that your heart also pleases me. I snorted. Don't flatter yourself. From the beginning to the end, you have seen me in your heart as a lowly mortal, an alien. Instead of treating me as an equal, you treated me as an obedient pet bird. How could I love someone who treats me like a pet? The only difference between me and them is the little fondness you have for me. But what is that? A handout for seeing as I've foolishly adored you for years. Saying that, I took Kronos' hand, my gaze gentle. He's the only one in my heart for a long time now. The heavenly emperor was incredulous. How can that be? If you don't have me in your heart, why did you carve our names on bondstone? He gazed at me and softly said, Ruji, I was actually very happy when I saw the bondstone today. Until that moment, I didn't realize that the person I love the most is you. I smiled coldly. Carving your name was just to kill you. Do you know why every one of my husbands has died a bizarre and tragic death? Because Goddess Selene took a liking to my divine core. She planted an ancient spell on my in-laws' line, cursing each of my husbands to die horribly in their new marriages. Each of my husbands would see the scene they feared most in their lives on their wedding night, and then die in fear of their own lives. If you were just a mortal, you would be nothing but a corpse today. Unfortunately, you're a god, and spells can at most only seriously injure you, but not kill you, since the rule of the heavenly court is that mortal golden immortals deserve to sacrifice divine core. Then we also want to give the heavenly court a taste of the mortal rule as well. I grinned. My words killing me. The first rule is to change the dynasty. The strongest is the king. 10. After saying that, I ordered all the spirits to suck the power of the immortals in the formation to restore themselves. The celestial emperor was also trapped in the formation, unable to get out and could only watch the power drain away. Ruji, you must not make another mistake. Everything started because Ringyu was too jealous and did something wrong. How about this monarch makes it up to you for her? This monarch will grant you the position of heavenly empress, and from now on you won't need to cross the tribulation to become an upper god, and heaven and earth will live the same life. This is what I used to look forward to the most, and what I haven't gotten even after 2 lifetimes of hard work. But now, I don't care about it. Upper God, Queen of Heaven, it's all about your heavenly court's rules. In front of my absolute strength, it's only right that you should abide by my rules. Since becoming a golden immortal, I've used all my strength, just wanting to integrate into the heavenly court and not be that deviant. But it's only now that I realized. When I have the power of speech, the power to control the heavenly court, it is they who are the deviants. And I, on the other hand, am the only orthodox one. In front of the celestial emperor, I crossed out the 2 names on bondstone. Then with force, I carve my name in Kronos. From now on, you and I will break our love and have no more relations. As the words fell, the power of faith on all the immortals happened to disappear altogether. Here and there, screams rang out, and I smiled brightly at the heavenly emperor in the formation. If you're really as innocent as you say you are, then walk out alive yourself. I never looked back at him again. Goddess Selene trembled and begged for mercy when she saw how determined I was. Ruji, they'll give you back the divine core, and my Archon ascension as well. Don't you kill me. I looked at her faintly, not uttering a word. She waited long enough for me to answer. Embarrassed and a little proudly annoyed. Haven't you nothing to lose, since you don't love His Majesty, and I've returned your husband to you? Why do you need to drive me to extinction? If it wasn't for you taking away His Majesty's gaze after you became an immortal, why would I be jealous and cast a spell on you? In the end, it's still that you shouldn't have become immortal. I laughed lightly and raised the long sword in my hand to swing down. That chattering, stupid to the extreme head rolled to the ground, and the hatred in my heart slowly put down. Judgment conflux. The wailing in the wailing sound is getting smaller and smaller, but the black shadows are more solid than one by one. Some of them can even see the appearance of a mortal's facial features. The heavenly Tao, however, warned me at this time to stop killing, or else the wrath of heaven will fall, and I will be reduced to a mortal. I just raised my eyes lightly. There is nothing wrong with being mortal. What I want is for heaven and earth to be free of gods. The black shadows also gave me a faint smile, as if affirming my decision. Judgment conflux. When it stopped, there was no longer a single sound in the formation. In the entire celestial court, not a single god was innocent. Thus, overnight, celestial purge, the heavenly court disappeared. The world sun and the neighboring emperor also died in the formation because of their evil deeds, and their karma backfired, and their souls were dispersed. When the dawn broke, the black shadows waved goodbye to me and dissipated into the morning light. They were born out of hate, and with their hate gone, they naturally ceased to exist. Instead, I stood by Rebirth's spire holding Kronos' hand. He still had the same demented, allure-nothing memory. But he wasn't so afraid of me anymore. It will probably be many years before he is well enough to remember me. But am willing to wait. Before jumping into the Rebirth spire, I held his hand tightly and asked, "Why are you afraid of me? What did you really see in the beginning?" I didn't expect him to answer. But in the darkness, I felt my hand tighten in his reverse grip. I saw that Eboshi was in love with someone else and hated me. I was afraid you'd never see me again. Never love me again. I slowly closed my eyes as teardrops rolled down my face. In this lifetime, we will meet again and again in the cycle of reincarnation. Love each other again and again, and stay with each other until the end of the world.